Howdy ho, peeperinos! How y'all going? I'm here today to talk to you about HSP108 Assessment Task 2 Case Analysis. This is the one you've all been waiting for, I'm sure, because quizzes and discussion boards, they're kind of easy. This one requires a little bit more work. So, because I like really shitty graphics, I have once again given you a whole bunch of random pictures on the first slide. One of a Googling cat trying to find out how to catch the little red dot. The reason I've given you this is because I want you to obviously use Google to find an example of a police interview gone wrong. Now, this can be pretty much anything. There are so many great examples of police interviews gone wrong out there. You're pretty much sport for choice. So I can think of interrogation interviews in my favourite TV show, Adventure Time, in a couple of, movies like Bad Boys. There's another one with... I'll put some examples up online. I found a whole bunch of them the other day and I'll put them all up online for you so you can see them all. They're just so funny. But, like where they throw phone books at people and all of that sort of stuff. This is what I want you to do. So you have to Google, get online, find an example of an interview like that. Plus you need to go and find some research literature, which is why I've got pictures of computers in the library. Then you need to do your analysis. So you need to grab your example interview and then you need to read your literature and go, what's wrong here? What are the elements of the example interview that are really problematic? What does the literature say about this being problematic and how to make it better? What do they say about making interviews better overall? All right, so that's how you subject something to analysis. You need to link your thing that you're looking at, your problematic interview, and your research literature that you find and bring them together and make links between the two of them. And of course, then you type it up on your computer. Second assessment finished, yay! Again, quality graphics. Apologies, but I like them. Okay, so it is due at the end of week 11, Friday the 12th of May, 2017 at midnight. It is 1,500 words maximum, and that excludes the references. So the references are not part of the word count. The weighting overall for this assessment is 40%. Very easy, really. So what you need to do, as I've pretty much already told you, you need to find an example of a police interview and analyse it in terms of how it went wrong. So it can be a pretty crappy interview, like this great one here, depicted in this picture. The example can be fictional. I've given you a whole bunch of little hints there. Or it can be real, from anywhere around the world, any type of media format. You can even transcribe something out of a novel if you want. Or take photos of the pages of the book and I can, read through it. Whatever you want to do. You need to draw on readings from the unit, wider literature reading located using library databases and Google Scholar, which is why we have a picture of the Googling cat. Now, because I like structure is good. I've given you a suggested structure. We've got an introduction where we introduce the case study with a couple of topic sentences, briefly note what the case study interview is and where it came from, and then formulate and include a thesis statement. So what are you arguing about this thing? Well, this interview totally sucked because of two things. And then you tell us. It is clear that this police interview went wrong because of the unethical behaviour of the police officers in two ways. First, the officer used coercion in the questioning, and second, the officer hit the person with a phone book. This is just my corny examples. Try not to fit with this. Go nuts. Enjoy. Find whatever you want that's going to make it really interesting for you. Then we've got a little section where you describe the case study in further detail. So give us a little bit of background. Put the example in if you want. You can screenshot YouTube if that's where it is. You can, like I said, take photos out of a book and put that in. But you need to be able to tell me in 200 words what happens in that interview. All right? Very quickly. It's basically like a short transcription, but pull out a bit of detail so you can fit it into that 200 words, obviously. So it's your summary and paraphrase of what's happening in the interview. Then you need to talk about how the interview went wrong and pick a couple of points. Now, depending on the interview, it will depend what points you make. You might find that just focusing on 2 key points is more than enough for the 500 words that you've got left after you go through the other sections, right? You might find that that's ridiculous and that you actually need to find a third point. So you can focus on 3 points. I'm going to hope that you guys are really intelligent folkies and you're going to be able to get a good sense of whether or not you need 2 or 3 points. Don't hesitate to get in touch though if this is something that's giving you a headache and making you stay awake at night. So how did the interview go wrong? Point 1, again, I've just used that example. The officer used coercion in the questioning. Explain your key point and how the interview went wrong. So how they used coercion. Explain what the research says about how the interview went wrong. So what does the research say about using coercion in an interview? Obviously, it's going to say that's a really shit idea. So you just need to read that research and tell us all about it. It's easy. Explain what the research says about how the interview should have been managed. So how would you make that interview more ethical, more socially just, and more not coercive? That would be the stuff that you tell me about in that paragraph. And I've gone on with the suggested structure on the second slide. How the interview go wrong? Point 2, the officer hit the person with a phone book. Another 500 words, exactly the same points. And then you might find a third point, or depending on whether or not you really need to elaborate, 2 points, totally fine, whatevs. That's fine. Then you've got your conclusion and recommendation, because very often a case study analysis will always make recommendations. What's the recommendation? Don't hit a bloody person with a phone book, obviously. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But you need to be able to say that the research clearly demonstrates that this is an example of an unethical interview because police officers shouldn't throw phone books at people. However you want to do it. So summarise your main points, recommend further action to resolve the interview issues. What types of things could we do? We need to train the officers so they don't throw phone books at people. Whatever. It's really quite simple. And of course, last not least, you need to reference this. Use it using Harvard style. I like to use it on the library site. Blah, 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 blah. The library website right there for you on the slide. Go and have a look. I've given you some steps to follow because it makes it a little bit easier, and because I love this image of the Googling cat so much, I decided to put it on again. Because the first thing you need to do is use Google to find your example. Then you need to find some literature about police interviewing. What does it say to do and what does it say to avoid? How does it say to make interviews ethical, for instance? Analyse your example police interview. What went wrong? Pick 2 main points. Blah, blah, blah. Then you need to write up your case analysis in a Word document, including a reference list. It's a good idea to have at least 2 references per paragraph in any essay. Having said that, this fabulous thing here, more commonly known as a criterion reference assessment sheet or marking rubric, actually gives you a good sense of what ballpark you need with number of references in order to get a good mark. I'll talk about that in a tick. So, yeah, think about having at least 1 to 2 references per paragraph in any essay. That's my basic rule for these types of things. So if you're doing 1500 worder, then you want at least 8, I would imagine. But you're just not going to have enough points. You might have 2 or 3 pieces of literature that talk about point 1, 2 or 3 pieces of literature that talk about point 2, maybe a couple of references in the intro. You're getting up there. But, read widely, because the more you read, the better your assessment's going to be overall. And, of course, write your reference list using Harvard style. Please don't freak out about this. There are like 50 million forms of Harvard style. Pretty sure they've done experiments on that. And they've found that there's too many forms of Harvard style. I'm sure that they go into a cupboard and they breed in the corner. Just follow the instructions that you've got on the website. If there's something you don't know how to reference, just email me and I can check it for you. If you don't know what something is, just email me and I can check it for you. Very simple. This is a first year unit. I want to try and provide an experience that's supportive you through these processes. And then you upload your finished assignment to the Dropbox. So it's actually not called Dropbox, it's called an assignment submission box. I have to change that on the slides. Yep, you upload it there, I mark it, give you feedback. It's all done. In fact, I probably won't be marking it. I'll be getting somebody else to help me with that. Okie dokie. So the criteria and reference assessment sheet, I'm going to read off these pieces of paper because this one looks like ants running across the screen. It's very, very basic. We've got 2 general criteria that we're going to assess by. Demonstrate and apply introductory knowledge about policing policies, practices, skills, blah, 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 blah. So I like to always make sure I include a criteria about addressing the set task because you'd be surprised at how many people just decide not to do that. And I think, well, this is really lovely and you've got great referencing and you've clearly done a bit of reading, but I didn't ask for an essay about how to ensure that people are safe at traffic accidents. So addressing the set task is a big one. Defining key concepts, so interviewing would be a key concept that you might want to define. Ethics, that sort of stuff, integrity, whatever, really. Content knowledge. So content knowledge about police interview problems is well focused and developed in depth with detailed and relevant authoritative knowledge. So I would be looking for very key points that you have made about interviews in this respect, particularly problems with interviews and how you're supposed to do interviews better so that they are more ethical or they're more appropriate, more effective, more efficient, all of those things. So that's content knowledge. Then we've got analysis of problems in the police interview. Clear, detailed analysis of problems in police interview. Analyzes problems in police interview with some lack of focus, some broader analysis of problems in police interview. So specifically, if you go through and you've got those very key problems and they're clearly listed in your work, some broader analysis might be, well, police are not supposed to be unethical and throwing a phone book at someone is unethical. You haven't made links to literature, things like that. You're probably just going to get a pass. So you can see how it moves along the spectrum, as opposed to, a high distinction response that might say, the clear ethical issue in this interview is that the officers have employed coercion in the processes. The form of coercion that we can see at work here is blah. McDonald 2015 says that, demonstrates that using these forms of coercion is highly unethical in police interviews because blah, 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 blah. That's detailed and specific. All right. Okay. The criteria for communication is a little bit longer, so I've had to put it over 2 slides. Communicate knowledge and research results related to subject matter in the form of essays. Clear introduction and conclusion. That's pretty straightforward stuff, folks. I'm going to take you through how to structure those in a minute. Including structure indicating each point of the essay, conclusions clearly evident. That's really important if you want a HD. Sorry, I should say an HD. Clarity of expression. Expression is clear and concise rather than talking about what you did on the weekend. Fluency of writing, which means there's no major gaps in the ways that you put your wording together. Appropriate format. This means that you submit an essay or a case analysis essay, which is I've given you the structure for it. You don't just submit a whole bunch of words with no subheadings and some sort of reflective journal. Please do an essay. That would be useful. Number of references, you can clearly see here, I've made it very specific, 10 or more references to support your ideas. Clear evidence of scholarly reading and research beyond the unit materials. So if you just reference your set readings 10 times, you're going to probably fail that section of the criteria. Please make sure you think beyond. Go and actually do some research in the databases. If you don't know how to use the databases, get in touch with the library and they can help you because they're really, really good with that stuff. And of course, Harvard referencing is consistently accurate. So how do we structure an essay? It's pretty simple actually, and there are so many great examples online of websites that talk about how to structure an essay. Having said that, it can also be a touch overwhelming if you're new to this whole essay writing biz. Obviously, you need an introduction. My basic rule for introductions is this is where you say what you're going to say. Very, very simple. Start with a couple of topic sentences, talking about the general overall thing, then talk about what your thesis is. This paper will argue that this police interview was profoundly unethical because the police officer shot the person in the head during the process. Whatever. Make your thesis statement really clear that they are unethical or they're inefficient or they're ineffective, whatever it might be. Make it very clear that you're making an argument in your discussion. And then give us a structure. First, this essay will talk about how it's unethical to shoot people in a police interview. Second, this essay will examine how it's unethical to kick people under the table while you're doing a police interview. Whatever. It's pretty straightforward. So that's your introduction. The body. Of course, the introduction is where you say what you're going to say. The body is where you say it. It's pretty simple. You do that with a series of paragraphs. I like to follow a structure of paragraphing called Peel. You may or may not recognise this. If you've recently been to high school, you probably do because I think they tend to teach this particular structure. Peel stands for point, which is where you have a couple of topic sentences about your overall point in that paragraph. E stands for elaboration, which is where you're elaborating. So P is point, E is elaboration. Elaborate overall what your general point is, probably one sentence. The next E is evidence. So this is where your research literature comes in. This is where you might use examples from the media and other types of essays or what have you. And then you go to L, which is your linking sentence. So what can you say about the relevance of that paragraph, the information that you've provided? How do you link it back to your main topic in that paragraph and then link back to the next paragraph in your response? Peel, look it up, read about it, learn it. It's great. And then, of course, following where you say what you're going to say in the introduction, where you say it in your body, then you say what you said in your conclusion. Pretty simple. You move from the specific to the general. Restate your overall argument, summarise your main points, and then, some sort of overall statement about where to for the future. Because I'm a nice person, no, actually, I really do like to support you guys. I've given you some example paragraphs and what they look like. These are what I would consider good paragraphs. So they've basically got all of the parts that they need. You can see here in this particular paragraph, generally there are a few officers, blah, 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 who do not act appropriately. However, the difficulty lies in motivating these few police to strive to improve their performance. So we've got a couple of topic sentences. Probably the first sentence is the topic sentence. The second sentence, starting with however, would be an elaboration. So you've got your P, your E. Now you're moving to your second E, which is your evidence. Improving performance can be done. We can see we've drawn on Dean and Thorn there. Then we've got some stuff about punch. Then we've got stuff from Schiabel, Angelus, Wolf, and Rosenthal. I just shouldn't try to read those names. I'm hopeless. That's your evidence. That's going to be your main part of your paragraph, okay? And then at the end, we've got a lovely linking sentence that says, we've got a point of relevance and then a linking sentence. So two sentences together that link back to the point and then link to the next paragraph. So you're linking back to the point is from this, we can see that citizen complaints are a useful tool to understand where corruption and lack of accountability stem from. Then, nonetheless, to be able to be the most effective method, there needs to be other mechanisms used in conjunction with this method. So we already know that this person's going to go on to talk about what the other mechanisms are with this method. An example of an introduction, again, a couple of broad general topic sentences at the beginning. The police on the front line when it comes to fighting crime. Being part of the front line means blah, 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 blah. To resolve this, there are mechanisms in place to keep police officers honest. 4 different types of accountability will be discussed. First, it will be blah, blah, blah. Then this will be followed by, then the role of the courts. Finally, this will be talked about, etc. It will be argued that no single, so you can clearly see a thesis statement here. It will be argued that no single method is correct, and combining the best bits method, blah, 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 blah. So you can clearly see that they're your main points in your introduction there. This is a very good introduction. Don't copy it because you'll be writing the wrong assignment, but it's, have a look at the types of words and things like that they use. Get people's feedback on your writing. If you're worried about whether or not you're using complete sentences and all of that sort of jazz, read it out loud. Sorry, folks, brain not feel right. Barely functioning this morning. Read it out loud to yourself or your cat or whoever else, and I can guarantee you'll find your mistakes in your writing. You'll find where there's full stops missing. You'll find where you've got semicolons instead of commas. You'll find where you've got however in the middle of a sentence, and it's actually 2 sentences, not 1. So all of those things will become apparent if you read through your work. What does a conclusion look like? Again, fairly straightforward. If we read through, we can see those main indicative sentences that I was talking about. There's a There's a nice summary of the key points in this one. There are a number of accountability methods. From the methods that were discussed, it is clear that no one method is correct. So a nice overarching thesis statement then goes through, talks about the different points that they made. Not one of the accountability methods are able to address lack of accountability on their own, and there needs to be a combination of all methods. So that's, what to the future. This is where we need to go to the future. This is why it's important. I hope that helps, because for me, I love to work through examples. I'm highly visual. I need examples, and I've never run this unit before, so I can't give you an example of the case analysis in and of itself, but at least I can give you this and show you the type of writing that I expect. Please don't put pressure on yourself. If you're freaking out about writing, there are so many resources available here at UTAS that you can draw on. If you're wondering what those are, just get in touch with the library because they've got heaps of information. You can go to the section of the library that says for students, and it gives you support with your assignments. So I think there's a whole link called assignment support, and then you can go through and you can find workshops and all sorts of stuff there. That's it. We are done. Hopefully that was useful and it helps to understand the task better. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Have a freaking awesome week.